the final paper for the class. So if you go on assignments, and here we go, paper 2, analysis and synthesis. And I have a handout of notes too on this paper, like we have on all the papers. So let's pull this up. This is pretty much similar to the first paper. There are just a few key differences. All right, so we're into the poetry section now, and we're wrapping up with looking at a play at the end. So, all right, all right. Here we go. This will be due, so Introduction to Literature Analysis and Synthesis paper, due Thursday, June 29th on Blackboard, Word doc or PDF only, Times New Roman, all the same format. There's a 200 points. There are a few breakdowns. This should be as the previous 6 areas. Introduction, clarity of thesis, body meal. You know, when you write an analysis, close reading, you're going to want to include a quote in each body paragraph. Here's the difference. This paper, you'll be talking about 2 texts. One must be a poem. Adherence to proper formatting and MLA guidelines. So here's the specific assignment. You will write a 3 to 4 page analysis and synthesis. So this one's a page longer, of 2 to 3 of the texts we have read. This could include 1 short story and 1 to 2 poems we have talked about. Here is the you have to write about a poem. I would recommend writing about a short story and a poem, or 2 poems. You can't write about the same text from your first paper. So if you've written about Saving Sorority or Sonny's Blues, you have to do something different. Remember, again, I can't emphasize this enough. You must write about at least 1 poem. Synthesis occurs when the writer takes 2 or more texts and brings them into their paper. The sources talk to with against each other. Synthesis enables more complexity and greater range of reference in the writer's analysis. To analyze, like in our first paper, means to show the relationship of the parts of the text being examined, how these relationships work with the meanings you write about. Everything's the same. First paper handout, second paper handout. Think about the themes we have been discussing over the past few weeks. Ask yourself this question. In what text do some of the themes seem prevalent? Think about how we have been discussing ideas of work, the American dream, the relationships between families, relationships between parents and children. Think about different encounters characters experience regarding race, gender, economics. Think about the role of memory and how it haunts individuals. Another theme I want to bring into play is the notion of trauma. Defined in the Oxford English Dictionary is a deeply disturbing or distressing experience, an emotional shock following a stressful event. Some of these texts we haven't read because for time, but basically you can take any of the story poems and look at them under these lenses. So you're not restricted to these texts I name. But here are the questions. For question 1, examine certain individuals' relationships with work and or time. How does time and work shape their identity? How are an individual's identities formed and shaped? What is the role of work in each text? How does work define individuals and their relationships with the world? Who has the biggest influence on the characters and their relationships with work? Think about the literal physical idea of work. You know, you have Romero, you have that room, you have those texts. But also think about poems, Oil and Steel, tours, little girls working at to block out the traumatic environment, the work people do, emotional, psychological forms of work on relationships. Answer 1 to 2 of these questions. Here are a bunch of texts. How is the American dream portrayed and experienced? What is the real America? Think of Nia's statement, the real America. Is there such a thing? What are the experiences of these characters that illustrate the real America? How do they deal with these things? How does race impact the view of the American dream? How does it make it different? Think of Earl and Mighty Ponds. Think of Langston Hughes' Song for a Dark Girl, Rigoberto Gonzalez's Casa, some of these other poems and stories. Again, 1 to 2 of these questions. How does trauma manifest and infuse the lives of the individuals within these texts? In what similar and or different ways has war shaped changed the individual's characters? Think of Yusuf Kuminyaka's Facing It. My black face fades, hiding inside the black granite. I said I wouldn't, damn it. We have a Vietnam veteran. James Tate's The Lost Pilot, different things of war there. Think of Langston Hughes' Song for a Dark Girl, which pairs really well with Alice Walker's The Flowers. Think of the traumatic events people go with. You can even talk about something that the little girl in Tours is going through with trauma, her family situation, and juxtapose that, show how it's different with a veteran going through it. It's trauma, but it's a different type of trauma. 4, how's family portrayed? What are the roles of parents and children? How are the roles played or navigated? A lot of our poems and stories deal with parents and children. Do the individuals' relationships change or remain the same throughout? What are some of the factors? How do they negotiate familial situations? What gets inherited? What do we inherit? What do these characters inherit from the parents? A lot of our texts deal with memory as well. How does memory affect individuals? How are they haunted by memory? Does memory affect them in a negative or positive way or both? Are they trapped or are they able to move on? Glaspell's Trifles here. You can tie in a poem representation of women, femininity, work. Look at the role. Women are gender in trifles. This is the final play we're going to look at. Look at how are they described from the opening, while the women, they're misses and the men given their full names. How do they complicate this view? How are they viewed? How does Trifles frustrate and complicate the traditional notions of a crime story? The women find all the evidence, the clues, and the men are oblivious. How does the title Trifles, Small Inconsequential Things, inform the play? So that's the final paper. Pretty much you can choose any text, at least one poem. I think for my money, this would be easier if you talk about 2 poems, a poem and a short story. You don't want to talk about too many things. I'm giving you 3 maximum, 2 poems and a short story, so no more than 1 short story. And I'd rather you dive in than just touch the surface. So I'm gonna pull up. I have a page of notes here as well. So let me go to our weekly sessions. All right. Do I have my notes here? Well, anyway, let's look at how we would set the paper up. And I'm going to include a list of notes. Here you have a bunch of different options for this paper. And I think what the key is to map out the paper. And I do have that page of notes coming along. So, you do your heading, right? Joe Smith, my name, when's it due? 29th June. No, it's the class, right? I'm messing it up. 29th June. And you have your introduction here, right? The whole paper is double space, intro. And you go down. This is going to be about the length of your intro. What would be a good paper? I'll give you a bunch of different options. You have War in Tate and Komunyakaa. I think that'll be the one I'll look at. But what also works really well together? In what story, if you haven't written about it for your first paper, in what story and poem does a piano play a big role? It saves Sonny, and it also saves the little girl in Tours. So you can look at music and the role of the piano in those 2 texts. I think that would be wonderful. A thesis in both Komunyaka's Facing It. No, I don't want that. And Tate's The Lost Pilot. Individuals deal with war, memory, and trauma in unique and different ways. There's your thesis. And I'm going to give you a couple different options how to set up your paper. And again, before you just start looking at the blank screen and writing your paper, I would really highly recommend you have an outline. This is an outline here. Body 1. You can look at facing it, right? What's going on in facing it? What's the character doing? How's the character reacting? What's going on? You know, meal paragraph and main idea evidence analysis link. Follow that. Your body paragraph might be about this long. Body 2, the lost pilot. You see, and you could talk about what's going on in the lost pilot. In facing it, main idea topic sentence. An African American Vietnam vet looks at his past in war, right? In the lost pilot, an adult man thinks about his father who was lost and killed in World War II. Not a veteran, completely different, but they're still similar. So body 1, facing it. Body 2, the lost pilot. Right, you have your body paragraph, which is going to be about that long. Body 3, you can go back to facing it. Remember, your body, this paragraph's going to be about body 4, the lost pilot, and you could have, and here's where you can, body 5. Tie them both together. Tie them both together. Conclusion. And there's your paper, right? There's your paper. If you want to add another body paragraph, you can. But you can map out your paper. You can do, alternate the text. Paragraph about one, a paragraph about another. Paragraph about one, paragraph about another. Tie them both together. That's one option. Another option, you could do facing it, and then another paragraph on facing it, and then the lost pilot, and then the lost pilot. Tie them both together, conclusion. Or, your body paragraphs would be a little longer. You could do both texts in the same paragraph. You would look at, facing it and the lost pilot, both individuals deal with war in different, you would just, the first part, what's going on. Your paragraphs would be a little longer because you would do like a double meal then, because you would have to quote from both texts. But that would be another option. But I think your first step, and again, I can't emphasize outlining your paper enough. And mapping it out like this. Just use this as a guide to map it out. And here would be some easy steps. These are universal steps for writing papers. 1, what jumps out to you? The first thing you need to do, choose the text. Poem. You can do 2 poems. That's what 2 poems, 1 story, and 1 poem. Has to be different from your first. So choose those. And go back and look at the questions. Remember, don't try and do too much. So look at the questions. And start to brainstorm. Free write. What jumps out to you? Ask yourself, what's going on? What are some moments in the text that jump out to you think are important? Close read the poem, right? If you go back to that poem sheet and close read the poem line by line and tie that in with the story. Think of Tours. The girl uses the piano, stands there in the dark like a boy with an orchid. The piano is important to Tours. The piano is important to Sunny. Mayop in the Flowers, Song for a Dark Girl, Langston Hughes. You see those, how they start talking to each other. Outline. Just fill out this outline like I have above. Jam in what you're going to write about. Draft. Draft your paper. Reread and revise. A lot of people write the paper and oh, I'm done with it. Reread your paper. Reread it. Reread out loud. Reread it out loud to yourself. You'll catch your the mistakes and whatnot. Turn it in. There you go. That's the steps for the paper there. Please, again, if anyone has any questions, if you're stuck, you don't know what to write about, contact me, email me, and we'll set up a meeting to talk about it.